Hmm. Susie Kim, welcome to the Hey Lover mini-series. How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you here. So, Susie, we're going to pick your brain today about all things relationship and love and how to communicate better and really kind of how to better ourselves to call in our love or really our person. So, we're going to start with some rapid fire just to warm us up before we dive into the juicy stuff.
Love it.
Yay. So Susie, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Sydney.
Okay. And your human design?
I'm a projector, self-projected projector.
Your profile?
35.
I was going to say, I'm like, there's a 3 in there, definitely.
Yeah.
So what's your love language?
My main ones would be words of appreciation and touch.
Okay, awesome. Me too. What do you know your erotic blueprint?
Ooh, I reckon sensual.
Yeah, me too.
Should we date?
Yeah, I know. I feel like we should date. Yeah, Andrew, Susie's partner. Just move aside. And then, what is your attachment style, or what was your attachment style? If you're secure.
Yeah, I would say earned secure and primarily anxious.
Yes.
Prior to that.
Yeah. I feel you on the anxious front. What is one word to describe your old dating life?
Ooh, so many, like toxic, chaotic.
Yeah, I'm like turbulent comes to mind.
Chaotic.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's one word to describe your current relationship with your partner, Andrew?
Joyful.
I was literally writing this and I was like, I feel like you're going to say fun. Like, I see it. Yeah. So what do you wish people spoke more about?
It's interesting. I wish actually people spoke more about their needs, like their actual deep human relational needs, right? It could be attachment style needs. Because I think we don't really talk about it. We talk about normal surface level needs, but not so much our deeper core needs that everybody needs. And we cannot deny them. And if we just were more upfront about it,
the world would be a better place, wouldn't it? Totally. Yeah. I think it's so like stating your needs is one thing, but it's like actually knowing your needs is a whole nother ball game.
It is a whole nother thing.
Seriously.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what's the worst dating advice you've ever received?
I think the worst dating advice would be from that book, The Rules. And it's got this whole series of don't reply to a text within 3 days or something like that.
Don't say kidding me?
Yeah, something like that. And then it says what was it? It was like, don't say yes to a date if it's within 3 days. It has to be like the following weekend. Like it has all these crazy rules about being unavailable. And I read it in high school and uni. And yes, it's sort of like it's sort of like the girl version of the game.
Oh my God.
For men. Yeah.
But it's like, I just think like the game, you can just play the games until like you're literally going crazy. I'm like, if you can just be your authentic self and like, I'm all about like double message, freaking, text them straight back. Like, I don't care. The quicker you can do that and you're going to figure out that if they're the person for you or if they're not.
Yeah.
Because the games, you're just going round and round and round in circles. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Anyway, strong proponent for no games here. That's my anxious attachment style speaking. I love it. Okay, red flag and a green flag.
For what? For dating?
Yes.
Okay. So a green flag for sure is someone who can laugh at themselves and not take themselves too seriously. A red flag would be, it's more a felt sense thing. It's like, how well do you know yourself? And do you know, your trauma and your shadows and how that plays out, Yeah. That's some good. And if they don't, that is a red flag.
That is the red flag. Yes,
yes, because we will be seeing that in the relationship.
Oh yes, yeah. That actually got mentioned on the podcast previous to this, and it was the same thing. It's like people who don't know their trauma and like they're like, my childhood was perfect and life is perfect. It's like, all right, I'm going to put a big, X marks on you and move on.
Yeah,
dangerous territory. So I really want to start, Susie, because you have the most beautiful relationship with Andrew and you're getting married soon, a couple months, is it?
Yeah.
And I would love you to share with the listeners just your relationship and what makes it different and how you guys do love.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my relationship with Andrew is it's interesting because we are a meeting of opposites in many ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm pretty spiritual, quite involved in the scene, and he is completely not. And I have a lot of people asking me, like, how does that work? How do you guys do that?
You call him a normie, don't you?
Yes, I call him a normie. He's very mainstream.
I love it. Does he know you call him that?
Yes, he does.
I love it. Oh, it's so good.
So yeah, that took a while to really work out. It was a big question for us, in the beginning, like, how do we even make this work when I have all these values and these interests, and I would go away on retreats and I have this whole community and all that kind of stuff. And also because part of that community is the neo-tantric community, right? And he wants a normal, conventional relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of
compromise comes to mind.
we had to work it out over time and kind of meet and create something that basically worked for us, right? And I think really, like, we meet in all the core values. Essentially, we meet, but the details of it we had to work out. So yeah, it's like now I feel like, all right, on the energetic level or on the frequency level, like we're in the same place, but we have completely different language, right, for how we see things and understand things. And we do have it is an open relationship, but it's pretty contained. Yeah.
I like that. Can you put some specifics around what that looked like for people listening? Like, I know you've called it monogamish before, which I really liked. It was like, we're kind of doing it, but we're kind of not.
Yeah. So monogamish is a term, coined by Dan Savage, who's a sex and love columnist, like back in the day. And it basically, for me, what it means is that we are emotionally monogamous, like we're committed to each other. This is our relationship. It's definitely our primary we're in, right? And sometimes because I'm quite okay with sharing erotic energy with other people, and that doesn't really mean the same thing as it does to him, right? Although it's changed for him too. It just means that with specific people within my community, I can basically play to different degrees. And, I'm pretty clear with discussing exact boundaries.
Yes,
and
exactly.
People, and it's not a free pass, and it's, and so we have some openness, but it's pretty contained. Yeah.
That's so cool. How does that get met with people who are maybe normies / a little bit closed-minded?
Yeah, well, I think all of my friends, I guess they kind of know me, right? So they understand, and they're just sort of happy that it seems to work, right? Yeah. I'm not fully sure how his friends took it. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's not your business anyway.
Yeah.
But do you know what I think is so powerful? So in this space where, whether it's poly, whether it's open, like communication is like the foundational piece. Communication, boundaries, like speaking your truth. That is probably like the one thing that, even me, I'm in monogamous relationship, like it's just Blake and I, but there's the element of communication, which I think is so important in a relationship like yours, that we look to relationships like poly and open to be like, wow, they communicate everything, like the tiniest little detail. They're not going to not speak it because it could mean the biggest world of difference to your partner. So how do you and Andrew, like, how do you communicate? Like, what does it look like? Say if there's like a really big issue or something small, what does it look like?
Cool. Do you mean in relation to like other erotic connections or just in general?
I would say in general. Because I feel like for people listening being like, wow, I could imagine communication would be a strong suit for you guys.
Yeah.
How do you navigate it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess, okay, so this is the thing, right? I actually said this recently. I think it only takes one person who's really skilled in relationships for a relationship to be really easeful and succeed. And the other person simply actually has to be willing. Right. And I share that because I think it's really common for one person to be really interested in growth and development and relationships and all that stuff, and the other person to kind of be willing, but not actually be on a personal development journey. Right. And honestly, it's great if you both are, but it's not needed as long as one person's really, really good and the other person is willing to kind of come along, right? Like, I fully believe that.
That's a good point. Yeah, because so many people, well, I'm generalizing here, but I know a lot of especially women who are doing the work, they're like, I wish my partner would do the work, and I wish my partner was into this work. And it's actually really eye-opening to be like, you don't need them to be, they just need to be willing and able to communicate.
Yes.
And then it's actually an easier process. Do you ever find, and you're probably well versed in this, when there's two people who are doing the work and two people in the quote unquote spiritual space, it can actually be a little bit jarring?
Like any combination can be jarring, but yes, it can also be jarring in that space, because I think sometimes in the spiritual community, like there's a lot of like using and weaponizing some of the terminology and some of even the communication structures and things like that, in a way that is not actually fully loving.
Yes. Yeah.
So it can get a bit icky, but I wouldn't say it's exclusive to the spiritual community.
No,
it's just that yes, it also happens for sure.
I've had a few friends who are like calling in their partner, and they were calling in someone who's connected and spiritual and in the spiritual community, and then they get that and they're like, hold on a minute, this is not what I want. Like, because there is a bit of the spiritual bypassing and just like like utilizing spirituality to kind of get away with things that they shouldn't really get away with.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see it time and time again.
And I'm conscious of the question you asked me, but I really want to just mention something about when you're like, because I see that a lot with women who want a spiritual partner or someone who's into growth and things like that. And I sometimes question that, I go, look, it's not necessary for you to definitely be with someone who's into growth and spirituality. Or actually there's a lot of guys who are, right? They might be into surfing, they might be into breath work, they might be into yoga, they might be into just general motivational audiobooks or something, right? Or they might be into business and entrepreneurship and growth that way. And what's more important than them being into spirituality is, are they grounded? Like, do they have a good heart? Can they actually, are they relatively secure in their functioning or aware enough to look at it? Are they patient? Are they like spacious in themselves? It's like these things are so much more important than whether or not they've done some work.
Like work,
hashtag work. Yeah, quote unquote work. Yes.
Oh my God. It's so funny. Like, I feel like as humans, like we love a label. This is just what I'm really coming to terms with. It's like, we love a label. It's like, I'm spiritual, I'm this, I'm that. And it's, like being spiritual means what? It's like the practices and like the foundational things that actually make you that.
Totally. And when we're really looking for it again, right, it's the frequency. It's like, what is their relationship to their heart? How do they live? Are they kind? Are they grounded? Are they in integrity in their normal life? Like that, rather than if they do spiritual practices.
Do you meditate or not? Yes or no? It's a deal breaker.
Exactly.
So I feel like this segues really nicely into like, what does a healthy relationship look like? Like in your practice, in your work, you will see hundreds of relationships. What should we be looking for?
Yeah, beautiful. This is such a good question, because I think a lot of people, right, the common mistake that people make, depending on your history and things like that, is you want a relationship that's like super exciting and passionate and alive, and there's a lot of charge and all of that. And that's cool, that's exciting, but we want that plus, right, we want ease.
Yeah.
Right? If you're looking for a long-term sustainable partnership, you want someone with whom you feel at ease. Right?
That's so important. Yep.
Right? You can be yourself, right?
Yeah.
You can say what you want. You're accepted, right? You can be your weird kooky self. You can be your weird vulnerable self. You can be your insecure self. You can, and there's sort of a level of, maybe not all at once, but over time you can be yourself, and there's just this quality of, this feels easeful, right? And you need to probably have a level of that already within yourself before you can recognize it. But I feel like most people have some reference of that, whether it's in a friendship or in a family member, or maybe in someone they've dated, right? And I feel like getting used to that and knowing what that feels like can be such a guide for like, all right, yes, I want the passion, yes, I want the this and that, but I want it to feel like I can spend
safe and secure
20 years with this person,
Yeah. Well, it's almost like so common in dating. And I know I've had this, that it's like the intense butterflies and it's the passion and it's the fire and it's like checking your phone 1,000,000 times a day. Like that's fun and all, but like for your nervous system, that's a bloody nightmare. It's like you need something that's going to be met. It's that, but it's met with, as you said, the beautiful like security and like the flow and the ease, because or else our nervous system's going to be an absolute wreck.
Yes. Yeah. And actually I'll say, because I had someone say to me, hey, I actually just want to be with a woman who's able to have a really peaceful home environment, right? Because they had a history of dating quite chaotic women, right? Yeah. And sure, they've got stuff going on there. But one thing I was telling them to look out for was like, all right, well, when you're looking for a woman who's able to have a peaceful like home environment and able to be at ease, like really look for that quality, look for evidence of that, you know, like, do they have that with their other friendships? Do they have long-term friendships?
Yeah.
Do they have a history of that in their relationships, right? Do they maybe have that with their parents? Like, just look for evidence that she's actually able to do that, she or he or they, right? But yeah. So
that's a good point, because sometimes like, people could say it, but if they're not actually practicing it and it's not embodied, it means nothing.
100%.
So this is like a little bit of a personal reflection, but maybe have some insight on it. So when I was dating and I was calling in, you know, I wanted a really solid, secure, nice guy, you know, but then every time I was met a nice guy, I was repulsed by them.
Yeah, totally.
So like obviously there's a lot of work that needed to be done there, but what would you say for someone who's like, what they're calling in, they're actually a little bit turned off by?
Yeah. I would say a couple of things, right? Firstly, I would say that, cool. That's really common, right? The pattern of not being attracted to really available, solid men or women, and being attracted to the unavailable or more dramatic, right, people.
Yeah.
So
my whole dating life summed up.
So firstly, I'd say, great. If you realize that that's happening, do some work on it. Right? Do some work on it. And there's some part of you that's feeling more comfortable with basically like, it's either like your model of this is what love should feel like. It should feel more chaotic. Love should feel that actually, it's like that feeling, that chaos feeling more safe and familiar.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's your work to rewrite that. The other piece that I would say is your level of attraction, like, is actually really fickle, right? Like who we're attracted to, especially when it's being affected just by our conditioning and our history and our trauma and all of that. Yeah. It's quite fickle. Like we can change it, right? And I have personal experience of changing who I'm attracted to, such that now this is ridiculous, but I'm literally like, if I walk past hot, muscly dudes on the street, I do not even see them.
It's so funny how we can change it. It's a great.
Can change it. Yeah. And that's purely because I had a couple of bad dating experiences with these hot, muscly dudes, right?
You think it's a good idea? Like I used to have this fixation, Susie, with guys who drive utes. Like I would literally be like, they need to have a black 4x4 ute. Like that is so hot. And then now I look at them like, yuck. I'm like, why would I ever go there? Yeah. Oh, it's weird.
Yeah. So like, you can change it. Like,
so when you say changing it and doing the work, what would some of that work look like? Like for someone who's listening, be like, this is so me, where do I start? What would it look like? Obviously working with Susie Kim, but
it could work, like help working with someone, but if you're doing the self-inquiry yourself, I think it would be asking questions like, how do I feel when I'm with, like, how do I feel really deeply inside, right? When there's someone who, it's like when there's someone who's coming close to me and I kind of like them, what happens inside essentially, right? It's actually getting really comfortable with that, because what's happening is it's kind of your attachment systems coming in, right? Or your love system or whatever you want to call it. But there's some part of you going, this person is safe and this other person is not safe, right? This person is attractive and this other person is not attractive. So you actually want to get into what's happening inside, right? I would start with sensations, feelings, thoughts, right? And get really comfortable with that process. And then you can start to kind of interrogate it and question it.
It's such a process, isn't it? Like, I just remember going through it and being like, I'm literally met with the same like type of guy over and over and over again. I'm like, what am I not learning here? But I know a big part in my, journey in calling in Blake was learning about my attachment styles. And you touched on it briefly before, but can you sort of talk us through the attachment styles and maybe how they can be showing up for us in dating, love, and also friendships as well?
Totally. All your relationships. Yeah. So, attachment styles I'll just give a little proviso, because I think sometimes people get a bit too attached to attachment styles, and I'll just say
labels
and labels and labels. So look, it's a dynamic, right? Sometimes you can be predominantly one attachment style. Sometimes it can show up differently. Sometimes it can be like when you're stressed or when you're with a particular kind of person, you show up a bit more, anxious. With another kind of person, you might show up a bit more, avoidant, right? So yeah. So do you want me to just go through the attachment styles?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, cool. So the main ones that are now referred to are anxious. It's also called preoccupied. And that kind of attachment style is basically there's like a hyper focus on closeness and intimacy and like a fear of non-closeness, a fear of being left or abandoned, right? So generally it will show up as like this kind of vigilance and like making sure that my partner is always close, or making sure that, this person loves me and reassures me that they value me and care about me. Right.
Do not relate to that one whatsoever.
Yeah, totally. Good. So there's like this need for closeness, right?
Yeah.
And a fear of abandonment. And then the avoidant or dismissive attachment style is generally a bit more like hyper independence. So it's a bit more like, I need my space. And when people get too close, that like it can be perceived as like too needy, like other people's needs are too much, and other people are trying to interfere with my time or wanting too much from me, right? So it can feel not safe to go too close, right? Whereas the other people are like not safe to be too far
away.
Yes.
So that's that's an interesting dynamic together, those two.
Yeah. And they always match up together, of course, right?
When you said, like, as in you see that often is the attachment and the avoidant that gel together. Yeah.
Yeah. And even as a dynamic, even if you're generally secure, if your partner's a bit more anxious, right, you might respond to them and go, oh my goodness, they're being a bit needy right now. Right. And you sort of become like a bit more avoidant, right? Just in your response, right? Even if you're not avoidant, right? So it's a dynamic, right? It's a dynamic. Yeah. And then, just the other attachment style is fearful, right? Or disorganized. And that's again, there's degrees of how fearful, disorganized you can be, but that's sort of where you have both elements of both.
That was me.
Yeah. And that's common. Yeah.
And you said the dynamics before, because anytime like a quote unquote nice guy would come, I would be so avoidant, and I'll be like, oh, I'm like so turned off by that. Nope. And then as soon as there was like a quote unquote bad boy, I would be like, oh my God, does he message me? Like what, like, when am I seeing him next? Like constantly like taking up so much brain capacity.
Yes.
It's so wild to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be wild. And then, the fourth style is obviously secure, and it can definitely be earned, right? It can be earned over time and through relationships. So,
And having the right person, like, do you think that you need a secure, say if I'm anxious, avoidant, or fearful, as you said, do I need a secure to then get back to kind of level ground, or could I do that dating a, anxious or avoidant?
Either, right? I think it can help if someone's a little bit more secure, and that can help you as well, but not necessarily. Like you can definitely, it's very common for people with pretty opposite and right attachment styles that fit well together to end up together. It would help probably to work with, a therapist or if you're doing your own self-inquiry, to be really diligent with that. And do kind of somatic work or something that sort of brings your regulation into it, right? Because that's the other part around attachment styles. Like the anxious needs someone to in order to co-regulate, right? Whereas the avoidant like feels like they need to be alone to regulate. You see what I mean?
Totally. But so I suppose if someone's in this dynamic and they're listening, how would they navigate that? Does it come back to communication? Does it come back to knowing your needs? Probably both.
Yeah, both. It actually comes back to both, right? And so if you're quite aware that a dynamic's in play, you can say, hey, I can feel myself right now really wanting to reach for you. And I can feel that it is this anxious attachment style. And actually what I really need is to feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the thing, right? It's not your partner's job necessarily to always give that to you, right? But it is your partner's job just to empathize with you and hear you, right? So your partner can go, hey, I hear that right now. And I can hear that, as you're sharing that, I just feel this need to actually really be in my own space so that I can feel safe and free. right?
But even just hearing that, the way that it's communicated, it's not the dynamic of like, I've messaged you, Susie, and I'm anxious, being like, hey babe, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you responding? And then you're like, I'm not responding, I'm not texting back, because
totally.
Then I'm left in the lurch, and then you're like, oh my God, she just keeps on messaging. Yeah, honestly, I just think the solution to everything is communication.
Yeah, awareness and then communication.
Yeah.
Totally.
So what would you say, like, the common like quote unquote issues or patterns or themes that you see in your practice, like in dating and love? Like, do you think attachment styles or knowing that is one of them?
Yeah, I think attachment styles is important, just to have a little awareness of, just to know when you're going into a dynamic. I'd say the common issues, honestly, so it sort of circles back to this core needs piece, right? Because couples often, when they're arguing, are arguing about all the surface stuff, like, why didn't you take the rubbish out? Why didn't you come to my sister's birthday party? Like, why didn't you?
That one feels deep. Was there something there?
That was nothing. I literally made it up.
Okay.
Right? Like all sorts of stuff. Like, why are you speaking to me in that tone? Like, why are you it's all this stuff. But ultimately, like, there are deeper needs underneath that, right? Like, what's actually being said is, why don't you care about me? Right? Like, why don't you care about my need for space? Like, why don't you value me? It actually all comes back to attachment, right? In that kind of a way. Yeah. In like a core needs. It's like, my core need isn't for you to take the rubbish out, but my core need is for you to care about me.
Yeah.
And when you take the rubbish out, it makes me feel like you hurt me, you care. Right. So it's like, it's just getting down to that deeper level of what's going on in relationships. I find that couples are often fighting about all sorts of things.
Well, it's like the menial surface level stuff, but it's, and
which feels important, but it's not. Yeah.
How would you, like, so say mini role play, say like I'm so fixated on all the surface level things, and I'm like, Susie, you haven't taken the rubbish out, you haven't made the bed, you have left your teacup on the bench. Like, how would you then take it down to that next level and communicate at that next level of like, not talking about the petty stuff, but talking about like the actual needs?
Totally. So I would probably ask you something like, firstly, what are you feeling when that happens, right? When your partner doesn't do all this stuff for you, what's actually going on for you inside, feelings and sensations. And then I'd ask, I'd probably get you to, then go to the needs level. Like, what is it that you're needing in that? So it depends on what you're feeling, right? You're like, oh, I'm feeling really sad, because it feels like he doesn't care, right? Or like, oh, I'm feeling really, really sad and angry. And actually, when I go down into it, it feels really unsafe, right? It's like, so we're kind of getting to that safety or care kind of level. Yeah. And then we'd get you to basically communicate that, right? Like, when I ask you to do this and you don't, repeatedly, what's actually going on for me is I feel really sad and scared because it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel care. And that's what I actually, see what I mean?
Yeah. And, it's like the new information can provide the clarity as to why we're acting that way. Yeah. So good. Yeah.
Totally. And then that's, and basically, because on the surface, people are often clashing and people are arguing like, well, I didn't do that because blah, blah, blah. And I can't do that, but then when you get to the needs, it's like, you feel unsafe and you feel sad. Oh, well, that's something I care about. Like, I connect to.
That's when the empathy comes in, because it's like, it's like the fire's taken away and it's like, I get it. I'm like, you're speaking to me in a way I can understand.
100%. Yeah.
So I feel like we've all had times where we want to really communicate something to our partner. We don't know the time or place or something like that. How would you set up the best containment for bringing up something like this and communicating it?
It's so interesting. I mean, look, in a way, it depends on the couple and what their lifestyle is like, and if they have children and all that, right? Yeah. It is nice to create like a little intentional container for it, right? And whether that's like a daily check-in or a weekly check-in. Yeah. And just to have a time to like air some grievances. I personally like to play a game.
Oh my God, tell us the game, Susie. Of course you do.
Yeah. So every now and again, my partner and I play these games, and they're a bit tongue in cheek, but they can go, I would love you more if.
So good. Not conditional at all, but yes.
Completely conditional. And so it's just a place to like air everything. I would love you more if you didn't fall asleep with the air conditioning on every night, Yeah. It's like just a fun way to like offload. And again, we play it so we don't even have to take the next step. It's just because in a long-term relationship, you're always going to have stuff like that annoys you.
Yeah.
And
that's just making it fun. I love that. Yeah. Blake and I obviously do our rituals of connection every Sunday, but like,
Amazing.
I always find a conversation like that is met if you it's like ask for permission first. Like, hey babe, do you have space to have a little chat right now?
Yes.
Not even little chat, but do you have space to, I'd love to get this off my chest, whatever it is.
Amazing.
Instead of just like blurting it out when they're in the middle of something. And especially for men, like they're so like single focused in the best of ways.
Totally.
If we are interrupting and haven't given them the space to like switch tasks, they're like, whoa, like I want to give you attention, but I'm here right now. So I always find like containment and like the invitation. So they have an option to be like yes or no, or like, let's do it later or on Sunday or whatever, helps so much.
Yeah, you're so true. And generally, like when either of you are really stressed, like it's not a good time, right?
No.
It's when you've got a tiny bit of space, right?
Yeah, some breathing space is always good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like unhealthy patterns and like really calling in healthy love, like how do we rewrite these patterns from dating? Say like similar to me, I was calling in like the same guy over and over again. What would be some tips for that?
Yeah, it's really meeting like the deep parts of you, right? Like, and I guess it could be inner child work, right? Yeah. But it's really meeting the deep parts of you that, okay. Because this is what I find. On it. Yeah, this is what I find with, especially with women who are constantly attracted to unavailable men, which is a common scenario, right? There's usually, when we go into it, there's usually some beliefs of like, I don't actually deserve love, or I don't believe that love is possible for me in the way that I wanted. And even if I met someone who was amazing and I was attracted to them, they wouldn't want to be with me. And there's like a string of things when we really dive into it, like these kinds of feelings and thoughts. So it would actually be like going enough into your self-inquiry to maybe identify if there are some of these kinds of thoughts and beliefs and feelings, and meeting them with love, and acceptance, and bringing them in and going, hey, I see you. I see that it's really scary for you. And you think that even if you met someone, they wouldn't love you, and that would be terrible and that would be scary. Right. So it's actually meeting the parts of you that kind of feel like, that it's scary, or they don't deserve it, or it's not possible. Yeah. I
always felt like, and you touched on it in that just before, but like self-worth is literally the foundations to calling in your love, I find, because it's like when we can't love ourselves, when we can't know our own worth, we're going to have a really hard time to call in someone who's going to meet us on that level. And as soon as I started to do the self-worth work, and as soon as I started to actually state my needs and desires, that's when things started to shift, and I got out of those sort of, icky patterns. And I was like, oh, certainly that's simple, not really simple at all.
But it was a process, right?
Yeah.
Like self-worth work isn't light,
Oh no, not at all. And something that I've been seeing at the moment when I've kind of called in this relationship, and it's interesting, sabotage comes up. So it almost becomes too good that I'm like, something should be wrong here. I'm like looking around being like, something's not right, because there should be something going wrong. And it's funny how our systems are kind of wired like that too. When something is going really good, that we either fuck it up or we sabotage it or we withdraw. Again, that probably plays into the attachment styles. But is that something you see a lot in sort of longer term partnership?
Yeah, I would say it happens less. So longer term partnerships, it presents a bit differently, right? But I would say it presents in the first sort of 2-3 years. Yeah. Or especially like earlier, right? 6 months, 18 months. Yeah. And that would be really about, because by the time you're in longer term, things are kind of set in place and you have your patterns of how all this stuff
healed
plays out.
At that stage.
Oh, no. I wasn't even going to say you're healed.
No, I'm kidding. I was joking. I feel like people need to see my face on the podcast. I'm like, I'm definitely joking. No one's ever healed.
I also can sometimes be really gullible. So anyway, so funny.
I love it.
But that's really about regulating yourself, to if it's a level of ease, or if it's to a new level of trust, or if it's a new level of being able to relax into something and accept that it's okay It's like, oh, can I regulate myself and go, hey, it's okay to relax and trust.
Yeah.
Which is hard when there've been like experiences in the past where that wasn't okay.
Yeah. And you're used to turbulence like that. It took me a while. And I think, as I was sort of navigating, healing my attachment styles or sort of moving through that, I was constantly communicating, like big or small things. I was like, communicate, because it helped give like an understanding of where I'm at. Like it could be as simple as like, when you don't respond to me, and this, I sound like a needy bitch, but whatever. When you don't respond to me, I get anxious and I start to feel like I've done something wrong. And then so he will know if he's having a busy day. It doesn't matter now, but in the early stages, it's like, hey, I'll get back to you at, X time. And then it almost just like sets my nervous system at ease.
Totally. So, and it's quite vulnerable to share something like that, and it's so important, right? And it's you're doing it for yourself, really, right? And it helps your partner to understand, but you're doing that for yourself. And I feel 100%. Like because people can have so much shame around, they're not perfect, insecure, not perfectly healed relationship behavior, it actually helps to share it and go, hey, this is what's actually going on for me right now, and it's a bit vulnerable to share, but yeah, right. Like what you said, when you don't call me back or something, like I make up this story and I go into flight or whatever, right? It's like, yeah, it's so good to share that.
It's funny because like throughout dating, and I think you might find this in the work that you do, but I always showed up, I called it like the cool girl. Like I showed up as the cool girl, and I was down for whatever. Don't worry about messaging me back, like all that sort of stuff. But it's almost like on an energetic level, I was like vibrating at like super anxious, like, if you don't message me back, like the world's going to end.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot? It's like the way that people are showing up and the mask they're wearing are very different to like their actual energetic vibration of where they're at.
Yeah, totally. And I think it really is reflected in who you like you end up choosing to date. Like if you're being the cool girl but you're secretly really anxious, you're probably going to date someone who seems really cool on the outside but is secretly really avoidant.
Yeah. It's like just calling in all the fun ones.
Oh man. And there's going to be some problems because you're not going to be able to talk about your feelings really in a really honest way,
100%. I think I did a podcast on being the cool girl. It hasn't gone live yet, but it's just so funny because just like it's really like being the most, so it's the most self-abandoning you can be. It's like, I'm just going to pretend to put on this brave face and be the cool girl and, act like I don't really give a shit, but I'm abandoning every single need and desire of my heart. So
yeah, totally. Anyway. And it's kind of like not having that level of intimacy and trust within yourself enough, right? Which means you're also not going to get that in that relationship,
No. So authenticity is the key. Authenticity and
awareness, authenticity.
So good. So good. I want to close on a question about what is like the one book that you wish that you read before you maybe got into the dating scene or before you called in your love.
Oh, it's hard because I read a lot of books, right? And they were all very helpful. Yeah. But there is one book that I routinely recommend to my clients, and it's John Gottman's book, the 10.
Oh,
what is it called? The 10 Rules of Marriage or something.
Oh my God, so good.
Oh my God. 10 Rules of Marriage.
Googling.
I'm Googling.
Googling wildly.
John Gottman, 10 lessons to transform your marriage.
Ooh. Cool.
I don't think that is. I think it's actually not that. All right. I'll look it up.
We'll put it in the show notes. I love it. But it's life-changing.
It is. Yeah. It is life-changing.
And how can people connect with you, Susie? I know you've got an amazing course at the moment, Relationship as a Skill, your private work. Tell us all the things.
Totally. So I am running Relationship as a Skill, which is going so well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to run it again actually later this year.
Woohoo.
I've had super good feedback on it, and that's really like the actual skills, right, for dating and relationship, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to be breaking it down, all of the communication, the conflict, actually awareness of attachment styles, all of this stuff, and it's the actual skills. And then, yeah, for people who want to work deeper, I work with individuals and couples in the relationship reset.
Amazing. So good. Well,
yeah.
I loved chatting with you, Susie. That was so fun. And thank you for everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed, and definitely follow Susie on Insta. She is amazing at what she does, and she throws out a lot of knowledge on the gram.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shani. It was so fun.
All right, let me start recording.